I heard a saying recently that everything is going to turn out okay in the end. And if things don't turn out okay, it's not the end yet. Well, that's something to think about. You may have heard the story of Chicken Little, Henny Penny, another name, who had an acorn fall on her head, and she was convinced that the sky was falling. And she went around alarming everybody because the sky was falling and everything was going to come to an end, and it's just awful. Until she found out it was, and she really believed it was just an acorn that fell on her head. The gospel today is got some, sounds like bad news. With this virus business, it seems that that's an overall terrible bad, but then other things come on and you say, what worse can happen? And then the worst seems to happen. And you could say, that gospel is about these times. It's kind of the end of the world. Bad things are happening. And Jesus is predicting it in Mark's gospel. Well, let's look at Mark's gospel. Mark's gospel is written for a community of followers of Jesus who are experiencing very hard times on persecution and not being welcomed. And they had to live with, the word Jesus uses, tribulation. There are hard times there. But is it Chicken Little? We are all experiencing hard times, for the most part. And bad things happen, and there is in, at least in North America, kind of a cultural thing that there is a solution for everything. There's a pill, there's a medicine, there's an insole, there's a hair cream, or if I don't have hair, I can put something on my head and hair will grow again. Everything can be solved. And then we apply that, I think, and this is the dangerous part, we apply that to our faith, that Jesus is kind of a hair tonic or a relief, and that Jesus will solve everything. And all you got to do is trust Jesus, and everything is going to be better. I'm not sure that's true. I don't think everything turns out okay in the end, and if it's not okay, it's not the end yet. That's a nice thought, perhaps. And it's about endurance, and I'm all for endurance. But this gospel is really at the end of ordinary time, though next Sunday is the ordinary time, but it's also the feast, the solemnity of Christ the King. And it's at the end, in a way, it's at the end of the liturgical academic year, in this sense, that every gathering of the Eucharistic community on Sunday, we come to learn something about Jesus and trusting him and feeling forgiven and feeling nourished in all the ways that we have seen Jesus in Sunday's Gospels encouraging us. And then at the end, the question is, can you allow Jesus to live with what is unsolved, what is painful? We are still living. We got vaccines and pills and masks and things like that allows us to endure. But we don't know how long this is going to last. This is a time of tribulation. And what we have learned in the liturgical year and what we learn as Catholics is that God is not a remedy, that grace is not a remedy. God gives us life and says, live your human life, and there's going to be difficulties in it. And have you learned that you can live through them? You can live with fallen arches. You can live with hours. You can live with acorns that fall on your head, but the end of the world is not coming. The end of your world is not coming. The end of normal life as we know it has changed, and will it ever be normal again? We don't know that. The question at the end of, and I called it an academic liturgical year, have you learned anything about the call of Jesus? Did you learn anything about the fidelity of Jesus to each of us and to our human family, even though we've screwed it up? Even though we can interpret the news, global warming, which is real, the cancer, all the things that seem to be terrible, can we live with them? And can we die with them? And can we suffer with them because of our trust in Jesus? And the trust in Jesus is not that everything is going to be okay. No, not everything is going to be okay. There are deaths and tragedies and addictions, and things are hard at times. And what the gospel for Mark is saying, can you live through them? Can you live through them? Or is God something only we believe in when everything is wonderful? The sky is not falling, and everybody's well, and everybody's happy. Then do we believe in God? Is that what belief is? Or do we look at things that happen and say, God is testing me? No, God isn't testing me. I might be testing myself. So what we learn at the end of the liturgical year, I think, and then, of course, right after Christ the King is Advent, and guess what the church is saying? You're going to have to learn it again. Because you do suffer from chicken littleism. We do suffer from that. We do catastrophize. And we say, this is terrible, nothing could be worse, and then something happens. You say, what else worse can happen? Can faith and hope happen? And we say, well, I don't live faith perfectly, I don't live hope perfectly, I certainly don't do love perfectly. And the church says, let's do another liturgical academic year where the coming of Jesus says, I'm not abandoning you in your human condition. I will stay faithful to you. The sky is not fallen. The divine is coming to help us live with the experiences of things falling on our head, things breaking our heart. So at the end of this liturgical year, as we prepare this week to live the Eucharist, what have we learned about Jesus? Is God faithful when we are not faithful to the acorns falling on our head? When things happen, hard things? Do I run away? Do I catastrophize? Do I say, oh, it's all terrible, and I'm giving up on God because God isn't measuring up to my specifications and expectations? No, it's another year of learning, and we'll learn it again because other acorns will fall on us. And you say, no. Life says yes. And Jesus says yes to our yeses and nos, to our catastrophizing, to our worries, to our stress. And we don't give in to the false culture of snake oil remedies. Oh, if you take this, say this prayer, do these things, everything's going to be better. What's going to be better is each of us living the Eucharist, receptive to all the acorns, and all the faith and hope and love with which we live and share the goodness of our lives.